Welcome to the Book Tea with V.
Welcome back to this week's episode of the Book Tea with V. I hope everyone has had an amazing week. But as always, let's start and let's talk some pop culture. So we have to talk about the VMAs, and honestly, I feel like I'm this way with any award show. I just want to know what everyone is wearing. I sit there in my pajamas and I flick through and I go, I love that dress. That could have been a bit different, with like no fashion accolades behind me whatsoever. But obviously my opinion to me matters. I don't know if anyone saw this, but obviously it's all over TikTok, and the performances, Katy Perry, Sabrina Carpenter, like just to name a few. I've only seen a couple, but just sensational. And from what I can gather, sung live too. I just think to be singing and dancing at the same time, like I walk up a set of stairs and I'm heavy breathing, let alone dancing around stage and also singing a tune. The talent. But we also have to mention Taylor Swift shouting out Travis Kelce. I mean, are we about to see a ring on a finger? Are there marriage bells? Let me know your thoughts. So what have I been reading? I have been reading what everyone else has been reading, Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. And honestly, I loved it. I do have Wild Love in my library, but I haven't gotten around to it. I don't know what it is. I just didn't feel compelled to read it straight away when it came out. And then I just got busy. I read other things and it sort of slipped through my fingers. Wild Eyes, however, I don't know. I just read the blurb and I was like, I think I'm going to love this one. And I was right. Single dad. She's a country singer. It was perfect. It really was perfect. But now I am in a book slump. And this one's awful. I feel like it's been days since I've even wanted to pick a book up. I've tried audiobooks. I've tried physical books. I've tried my Kindle. And for about 3 days straight, I'm just not feeling it. It's a reader's worst nightmare. So I'm putting my foot down and I've said to myself, within 24 hours, you are going to read one of these books. You have two options. And I'm either going to read Little Rabbit by Emily Rose. And this is the second book in the Lost DeLuca Sisters series. I loved the first book, Little Mouse. And it's Mafia. And you can never go wrong with that. At least I can't. And then the second is Fractured Sky by Catherine Cowles, who just seems to be such a comfort author for me. And I figure one of these books will hopefully get me out of that book slump. We'll see how it goes. I feel like my TBR has changed so drastically already for September. A couple of the authors that I was going to read books for have pushed their dates back, which I was like, okay, that's fine. I'll just, swap in something else. But I wasn't feeling anything. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. And speaking of Mafia, I feel like my number one question that I get from anyone on TikTok or Instagram is, where would you start when it comes to Mafia Romance? And honest to God, I love this question because any excuse to talk about Mafia Romance or Mafia Romance books, Mafia Romance authors, I will do it. So this is where I always suggest you start. And I feel like I suggest this particular author because it's actually where I started. And that would be Michelle Hurd. And you can start with her Saint series. You can start with the Sinner series. Either way, you're going to have a good time. And I feel like it's such a good series, either one of them. And it's going to show you whether you like Mafia Romance. It's not super, super dark, but it's enough to really get you into that genre. And pretty much anything she's written since, I've flown through within the same day. She is just iconic when it comes to Mafia Romance. And then I would always recommend the Byrne Brothers series by Jill Ramsower. This is Irish Mafia and it is so good. I always remember picking up Silent Vows randomly and I still remember the book. I still remember the fact that she was mute, she didn't talk, and Connor, the mafia man of this book, was just like, there's something off. Why doesn't she talk? What is going on? Because it happened after an accident. This book, this series, incredible. Of course, then I would have to say Never Altage and her Perfectly Imperfect series. Every single book pulls on your heartstrings. The plot is always sensational. You honestly can't go wrong. And I feel like with Never Altage, they are one of the easiest rereads within the Mafia genre. And then lastly, I always recommend the Fallen series by Gabrielle Sands. And you honestly cannot go wrong with this series. It is so good. And that actually brings us on to who our guest is this week. Gabrielle Sands, thank you so much for being on the Book Tea with V. I am so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
There were things that I did not know about you because I do a lot of stalking with the authors that I'm going to be interviewing, and I just go through the website. And yeah, there are a couple of surprises for me. I can't wait to get into it.
A couple of Easter eggs.
Absolutely. And I always start at the beginning because obviously you love to write, but had you always been a big reader?
Yes, I feel like I've been reading since such an early age. Like I can't remember a time when I wasn't reading. I think my parents just started reading to me when I was like a really little kid. And I remember I loved Sherlock Holmes growing up, and I would just devour those stories, and they came in like little booklets. And I would just constantly harass my parents to like, get me the next one, get me the next one. And then as I grew up, I started reading Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, all kinds of stuff. And yeah, I've just always been really into stories and storytelling. I think I kind of had a bit of a break from reading when I started working my first job after college because things get really busy. But then I think 5 years into my career, I got back into it, and I was like, I think something was going on that was stressful, and I wanted to pick something up that just would be like an amazing escape. So I started reading romance. And I mean, it just blew my mind. I was like, this is so perfect. Like I can just open this book and be transported for a couple hours in this perfect world where there's no problems. And yeah, I just fell in love with it.
I love that. And you say Sherlock Holmes. I've never read the books myself, but I love each and every series film they do. Are you one of those people that you go, he doesn't quite fit, or did you actually enjoy the TV adaptations?
I really enjoy the TV adaptations. I can't remember. There's a recent one that I watched. The one with Benedict Cumber, whatever. So that one is really good. Yeah, I mean, I love it. I love seeing. It's been a while since I read the stories, so I think like my reference point is a bit vague at this point. So yeah, I just love it. I love the vibes, love the atmosphere. It's fun.
It's great. I love Sherlock Holmes. I really should read the books actually, because I feel like I'd really enjoy them. But out of all the books that you've read, do you have a top 3?
So yeah, I've been thinking about this actually recently. So there's this one author that I just adore. Her name is Elena Ferrante, and she's an Italian author, and she has tons of books, but she has this really famous series called the Neapolitan novels. And actually that was a bit of my inspiration for my Mafia books because it was set in Italy, and I just loved that her description of the setting so much. It really stuck with me. So that series is one of my top favorites of all time. She's an amazing writer. I also have this book that I really love. It's called The Book of Amber, which is, I don't think a lot of people know about it, but it's this kind of old school fantasy adventure series of books. And I remember reading it when I was pretty young, I think 14 or 15. And it just really stuck with me. So I go back to it like every decade just to reread it and, experience that again. And there's also one series that stuck with me because this is when I started reading romance for the first time when I was working. This series just like swept me away. It's called Fever by Karen Marie
I've heard
Moning.
of that.
Oh my God, it's just amazing. The world building is so good. The hero is delicious. It's really, really fun.
Adds to TBR immediately.
Yes, you should.
Oh, that's cool because I find that a lot of the authors that I speak to actually have books that I've never heard of. Like I find that it's never a Book Talk famous book. It's always something that's a little obscure to what Book Talk has. So I always love to write it down at the end of the interview because there are so many good recommendations that you have.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes I think like the books that stay with us are books that maybe come to us at a certain point in our lives where there's a transition or something's happening or whatever. And so that experience just gets like magnified and it stays with us for a while. So yeah, I think it's awesome that you get to discover all of these books as part of this.
100%. And obviously, you're massively into the writing cave now, but what started you writing? Did you always have like a plot in the back of your mind and you sort of put it to the side? Like how did you start? Where did you go?
just in general, like when I
like
started
what was
writing
the
my first
catalyst
book.
to you starting actually putting, you know, I was going to say pen to paper, but that's probably a little bit too old school even then. Maybe not.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, okay, it's actually a bit of a crazy story how I started writing. Me and my husband, we were living in San Francisco and working in tech, and we always had this dream of quitting our jobs and traveling
Hmm.
for a year. And, you know, it took us a while to kind of like save the money and work up the courage to actually do it. But one year we finally decided, okay, we're going to do this. We quit our jobs, sold our belongings, gave up our apartment. Like we were ready to go on the road for a year. And this was a month before the pandemic. And so you can imagine that our plan didn't really go anywhere. We were like 2, 3 weeks into our trip in Mexico City when the border started shutting down. Our flights were getting canceled. Like it
Oh
was very
no.
stressful. But we just thought, and we were like, well, what are we gonna do? Like we quit our
Yeah.
jobs. Like we have all this free time. What are we gonna do now? So we decided to just like find somewhere to kind of chill and wait it out. At that time, we were like, oh, this is going to blow over in a month. Like,
Hmm.
no big deal. I think none of us knew what was coming, right? And so we ended up going to this small town in Mexico and renting a house and just decided to stay there for as long as we could. And that's when I started writing because literally I was like, there's nothing else for me to do right now. I'm not working. We're not traveling. We're like isolating. So I'm just home all day. So let me just try it out. And I started writing. Actually, my first project was a fantasy romance, but I never finished it. I found it very
Hmm.
challenging to do both the world building and, you know, learning how to write. So then that's when I transitioned to contemporary and started writing my very first contemporary romance.
Which I was very surprised to learn was reverse harem. That was so left field because
Yes.
I knew you as a Mafia author. So when I was going through what you'd written before, it was so unexpected. And especially as a first book too, I feel like that's such a big genre to conquer as your first book. So I think my question would be, had you always had you always loved reverse harem, and do you see yourself writing that again?
So no, I actually had no idea the genre even existed when I first started writing. But when I decided to shelve my fantasy romance, I was in all of these like writing Facebook groups because I was like trying to learn and understand like what it's like to be a self-published author. And I saw that there was this huge community that loved the genre our age. And I was like, what is this? Like, this sounds kind of interesting. And so I started reading in it and I was like, oh, this is like really fun and just unexpected. And it felt like there weren't a lot of rules. It was like you could kind of do whatever you want with these characters. And I don't know, I just was like curious about it and thought, okay, let me give it a try. And the Rockstar piece, I really don't know why exactly I decided to go with Rockstars. Like it just kind of came to me and I thought like, oh, there doesn't seem to be a lot of these types of stories. So maybe I should just
Hmm.
give it a go. But yeah, it was an amazing experience to just try to write an RH book. And I think I kind of got lucky with that one. I think my natural just storytelling intuition just kind of
Yeah.
wrote the book itself. That was the easiest book I've ever written. It has been way harder ever since. So it was like beginner's luck. But yeah, it was really fun. I don't think I'm gonna do RH
Hmm.
anytime soon again. Um, I haven't felt called to it, but who knows? That might change
Do
in
you
a
think
couple of
that's
years.
because you write so now you write many male leads that are just so possessive? And it's Mafia. I mean, we've got to talk about the Mafia. What drew you to Mafia? Because it's very big difference from RH to Mafia too, and the men that you're dealing with and the relationships.
Yeah, for sure. So Mafia was really intriguing to me because I think after I finished the my first series, it was 3 books. One of them was RH, one of them was Menage, and one of them was male female. So it was kind of a
Hmm.
hodgepodge of everything. But that was the series where I really kind of learned like what it was to write a book. And I by the end of it, I was like, okay, I want to stick to male female just because that way I can really get deep into two
Yeah.
characters without having to write like monster sized books. And I was thinking like, what genre do I want to try? And so I just started reading a bunch of different genres, and Mafia really stood out to me as something that's really exciting because as a genre, because like you have the romance, but then you also have the suspense and the danger and the world building, and you can pick and choose like how much of that you actually put into your stories. Like you can have crazy world building in Mafia if you want to, but if you don't have to, you can also keep it pretty light. So I think that like it just felt really dynamic and flexible, and like I could go in so many different directions. I was like, I don't think I will ever get bored of this, because it's just, there's so much I can do. So that was one big part of it. And then I know you mentioned the heroes, like 100%. Like I was like the core hero archetype in Mafia of this like dominant, possessive alpha guy who will kill for the heroine. I was like, I love that archetype. And of course, you know, my heroes all have different personalities, but at their core, like they do have that energy. And I was like, I just love that. Like, I think this could be really fun. So yeah, I started writing Mafia and haven't looked back
I'm glad
since.
you did, because as a Mafia girly myself, it's that genre that just, they'll do anything for the heroine. It's you know, there's no limit. They're just limitless. And that sort of thing calls to me. And you know, I think a lot of people know you from the Fallen series, and that's where I found you as an author too. And it's just such a great series. It's so popular. I can definitely see why. But is there a particular part of that series that you loved the most or enjoy researching? Because I'm assuming a lot of research goes into, especially Mafia, because and I think it's this, whether it's historical or cowboy, because we read so much, we know. So there must be so much that goes into it that you've got to, you know, be so on point with what you're talking about.
Yeah. I did do a lot of research in the beginning, especially before I even started writing the first book, because I do value having a bit of those realistic details in the books. I mean, of course, you know, the books are, you know, fantastical and they're not meant to represent reality. They're fantasies. But I do like to drop some hints from real world and real life, just to really kind of ground them and make them, I think, more impactful. And so I did a lot of research before that first book. I read a bunch of like actually nonfiction books on like organized crime in Italy and in the United States, and really just tried to understand the traditions, especially, and, you know, the structure of these organizations and kind of what's the pecking order and all that kind of stuff. And really used that research as a basis for the world that I then created. And I think, so I think most of the research was actually done up front, and then I was able to kind of draw on that for the rest of the series. But yeah, I love that kind of stuff. I'm really big into just like research and reading and whatever. So I at a certain point I had to kind of like put a pause in it, because I was like, we don't need to go for too many details. Like,
but I feel like this is sort of a little extra question. Have you ever been to a place, or is there a place you want to go to research more, or to get like a bit of a visual for a story that you've got planned?
Yeah, well, I actually went to Naples last summer, and that was so amazing. I mean, I don't know if I got too much exposure to the local organized crime scene, but just not that I was like, you know, particularly trying to, but it just being there and you know, seeing some of the cultural things, like trying the food, seeing the sights, seeing how people live their lives. I think that kind of stuff, that was just amazing, especially because one of the families in my series is from a small town outside of Naples. So that was really cool. I went to Amalfi Coast as well, which was just unbelievable. I actually, I try to do that a lot. I try to travel to places and then see if I can write them into my books and kind of connect them that way. And well, my first book, it's set in Ibiza for quite a bit of it. So I did go to Ibiza. That was a lot of fun, as you can imagine.
Sure, much research would have got done. Like, no, it's all for the research. I've got to go to the clubs.
Well, but I was like, you know, my hero owns clubs in Ibiza, so it's also research.
That's hilarious.
Totally legit.
Absolutely. And with the new series, so you've got Fallen Gods out now. It's the first book's out, When He Desires. And personally for me, what I've loved about it is it's such a different angle on Mafia. I don't think I've ever read a Mafia romance where the MMC is sort of on the outskirts of it all. You know, everything changed for him at the start. He's sort of having to build a new life. So for anyone who hasn't read the book yet or knows anything about the new series, what can they expect differently to the Fallen series?
Yeah. So this duet, Fallen God duet, it follows the story of Nero, who's the consigliere of the Raphael, who's the hero from When She Loves. And yeah, the premise of the story is that he has to fake his own death at the end of When She Loves and kind of leave this life to
Yeah.
survive. And so he gets sent away with a sidekick, and they end up in this small town in Missouri and have to try to figure out how the hell they're gonna survive there and what they're gonna do there. So I love stories like this. Like, I don't know if you ever watched Lilyhammer or Tulsa King. There's a couple of shows where like it's a mobster in a small town essentially. And I just find them delightful. Like, I just love that setup of this like, crazy guy who is, a criminal and is
I need to write that down. I need to watch immediately.
Yes. I just love the setup of like this guy ending up in this place filled with normal people who like have no idea who he is. So I wanted to give it a try. I knew it was going to be a risk because, like you said, like it's just not your typical mafia. He's not surrounded by his people. He's really kind of, outside of that. But I just wanted to see what I could do with this character. And he's a beloved character. A lot of people have written to me after When She Loves saying, we need his story. Yeah. We want to know what happens to Nero. Like, they were all devastated that he was kind of, kicked out. So yeah, I mean, I think the duet is, I wouldn't say it's a big departure from my usual stuff. I think it's a little bit unique, but I think in terms of the vibe and the emotional content of the characters, it's quite on brand with The Fallen. I think it's probably closest in just the feel of it to When She Falls, because When She Falls is also a very emotional story. I think When He Desires is also very emotional and has parts that are quite dark, especially in the second book. That I'm working on right now. That's coming out in just a couple weeks. I can't believe it. But yeah, I think it's a really, different story, but with a hero that is your typical mafia hero that we all really
absolutely
love.
And we do thank you for that, because when the second book takes a long time to come out, it hurts. It really hurts. So I feel like you've done everyone a service. You're like, yeah, I've been there. This is why I don't do it. But out of all of your books, and it's a cruel question, it really is, but I have to go there. Do you have a favorite book that you've written so far, or a character that stands out for you?
Yeah. So I always say that, like, I feel like the latest book that I write is my favorite, because I really try to grow as a writer with every book that I write. I'm really focused on craft and kind of just getting better and better in storytelling. So I feel like every time I release a new book, it really is my best foot forward. But just in terms of the characters themselves, I think Cleo and Raphael are like a really special pair. I mean, they're just so fun together. They're so like their banter, their interactions, the games they play with each other. I think it was probably the most fun book I've ever written. And so, yeah, they're just really strong, memorable characters. And I want to bring some more of that kind of fun element back in my future books.
I was just thinking then, extra question again. Sorry, I'm just like ping-ponging these at you today. With my obviously reverse harem, we've got Mafia. Is there a genre that you want to do that you can see yourself doing in the future? Or are you sort of like, you know what, I'm going to stick with Mafia for a time? Or is there something you go, eventually I'd like to do that?
Well, like I said, my first attempt at a book was a fantasy romance. So I think that is still something that I'm curious about. Do I feel like I'm ready to write a book like that? I'm not sure. Like, again, I think I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So
you're going to do it. It's got to be right.
Yes, it's got to be right. And so I think maybe in a couple years when I feel like, okay, I'm ready for it. My next series, which I haven't really announced yet, and I haven't really fully fleshed it out yet, even in my head, but I want to really have a bigger aspect of world building in it. Still contemporary, still, crime, mafia or whatever, but just really amp up that world. And so I think that will be kind of my practice step to see like, okay, can I do it? Can I do it really well with mafia? Because then maybe I can do it really well with fantasy romance.
Putting on those training wheels, seeing how you feel.
Yes. Yeah,
and
exactly.
I know that you're even writing now at the moment, you're getting everything done for the second book. But is there a hobby or something you like to do to sort of drag you out and just get you away from the writing cave? I
mean, reading. I do a lot of reading as well. I'm like desperate to just have a couple of weeks once this release happens where I can just take a break from the writing and read, like
Yeah.
just binge as many books as I can. I can't wait to have time to do that. But yeah, I mean, I travel a lot, so a lot of people are surprised when they hear how much I travel. Me and my husband pretty much leave our home in Mexico in May, and then we're on the road up until September. And we usually, past 3 years, we've been coming to Europe and just going from place to place, exploring and spending a couple weeks at a time
Sounds
everywhere.
horrible. Absolutely. How are you doing it?
I know. It's like we're so lucky to be able to do that because, I'm flexible with this gig and so is he. But it does get a bit tricky. Like sometimes it is hard to be like, I gotta work, but we're in this beautiful place and I want to go sightsee. So you gotta find that balancing act.
A real discipline. Like I found even being here and doing podcast interviews, because we're currently in Canada, it's a very fine line of right, I've got to get back into, sort of work mode. So I can definitely relate to that because and especially when you're doing it all the time, I guess you become accustomed to like, right, this is playtime, this is work time.
Yes. Very, very, you have to be very intentional about it. But I do think it inspires me as well. Like I love just going for a walk and looking at things and seeing neighborhoods. And I love to eat out. We pretty much eat out like every dinner. So there's always something exciting there. I think I'm a bit of a novelty seeker. Like I like being in new places, trying new things. I think if I'm in one place for too long and have too much of a routine built up, I get a little bored.
And I guess with the Mafia writing as well, they're always going to and from, European countries a lot as well. Do you find that's helped with your research too, those little things that you pick up on the way?
Yeah, for sure. Like I think I feel like I've written like food items a lot into my books. And like, I always try to do something that like I've tried or like whatever. And if we're somewhere and I'm like, oh, this is like really cool, I like write it down. It inspires me for sure. I mean, sometimes just even, like I said, like going on a walk in a new neighborhood that I haven't seen before, you kind of just get so like entranced by your surroundings that it actually gives my brain like a break where I'm not thinking about the book. And then when I come back to the book, I'm like, oh, now I have all these ideas. And before, I was like, I couldn't figure out what's happening next in the book. So yeah, I think it does help.
100%. And I know that you love like traveling. I know that you love to go to all these cities, but do you have a favorite place that you've been so far?
Oh my gosh, that's hard. There's a couple. So there's this place in Italy called Matera, and it's this town kind of like inland, and not a lot of people know about it, but I think it's one of the oldest civilization or settlements, like human settlements in the world. And it's just like this beautiful kind of like cave city with all of these like homes literally like carved into this limestone rock or whatever. And yeah, it was just magical. So I was there last year for a conference, and then I loved it so much we went back again this year. And then highlight of the travels this year has been Zermatt in Switzerland. I've never been to Switzerland and I really didn't know what to expect, but oh my God, it was just insane.
I've been to Switzerland. It's pretty spectacular.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, this doesn't feel real. Like, this is so idyllic. It's just shocking.
I was like, okay, I feel like I'm in the simulation now. Like, if that's a thing, I'm here.
Like, it was crazy. I think I actually posted this picture on my Instagram on my author profile. Like, we were just going on a hike and we stopped by this like pasture with this like the most like attractive looking cow you could possibly imagine, with like a little cowbell.
I know exactly what you mean.
And yeah, and Matterhorn is in the background. And this cow is just like living its best life. I'm like, you have won the life lottery as this cow. Like, you're eating this pristine grass, drinking this pristine water out of like whatever, the mountain. Like, it was unbelievable. So I took so many pictures with that cow.
It's expensive, but I think you can sort of see why, because it is just this picture postcard place. Like, if you know, anyone listening, if you've never been, absolutely do it. It is stunning.
Yes. And I think a lot of people go there for like skiing in the winter, but we went in the summer and we like loved it. Like, if you're at all into hiking or just nature, I mean, it was just unbelievable. So I really want to go back. It was very expensive. Like, it was shocking how expensive it was, but
you sort of like,
but you kind of just,
is that another zero on there?
Yeah. You like, when you look at the things on the menu, like the prices in the menu, you're like, I don't understand how this is possible, but eventually I was just like, I'm just going to stop looking at them. I'm just going to look at the cow.
Look at the cow and just like give the card over without.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there a city or a country that you haven't been to yet that you're really hankering to go to?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. Well, I haven't ever been to like Norway
Beautiful, yeah.
or Sweden or Finland. So I would love to visit one or all of those. Just to see the vibes. Actually, one of the shows that I mentioned, Lilyhammer, it was about a mobster who went to Norway. Lilyhammer is a town in Norway. And so, yeah, that was just like, I think, I don't know if I would go to that specific small town. I think it's like a very small town, but it gave me some interest in Norway. I was like, I want to check it out and just kind of see what it's like.
And if you're still traveling, you may as well.
Yes. It's not too far from where we are.
It's so exciting. It's such a good way to do it, because I like to travel too, and I find if you can do what you love and travel, you've cracked the code.
Yes. Yeah. Combining multiple interests in one go is a very efficient way to live your life.
Until you just want to travel and not work, and you go, no, I still have to work.
Yeah.
But well,
definitely.
And I guess, you've got the duet to finish. You did mention some projects coming up. Is there anything that you can tell us about what is in the future for you for the books coming out?
Yeah, well, so this is actually going to be the first time where I don't have the pre-order for my next book set up once the second book in the duet comes out, because I haven't yet decided what my next series is going to be. I have two ideas that I'm playing around with. One of them is there's this family that I've already introduced in the Fallen called the Ferraros, and there's three kind of sons part of that family. And one idea that I have is doing, giving each one of them a book. But then this other idea that I've had for a really long time, again, it's a character he's the brother of the girls in the Fallen, and he's been kind of living his own life in Switzerland, in Geneva. And one of the reasons why we decided to go to Switzerland was because I was like, you know what, I just want to go and see what it's like there, see if I can get some ideas. And I do have some pretty exciting kind of vision for what, his story could be and that full series could be. And it would be set in Switzerland. So yeah, I'm kind of still, thinking about both of those options and weighing the pros and cons and seeing where the wind blows. So it's going to be one of those, but I haven't decided which one yet.
I love that. Well, we'll just have to wait and see, won't we?
Yes.
Thank you so much for being on today. I'm going to take this offline because I'm going to see if I can squeeze just any more information out of you. I always do. I'm terrible. But yeah, I just want to say thank you. I know you're traveling at the moment, so, coordinating is a lot harder when you're traveling. So I really do appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This is a lot of fun.
We'll do it again. Once the new series is out, we'll have to do it again.
Perfect.
Thanks so much. I had so much fun speaking with Gabrielle about all things Mafia, and I honestly could all day. But if you haven't read her latest duet, which is When He Desires and When He Takes, you absolutely need to. So these are the books that you need to be aware of. We have Between Desire and Denial by Shane Rose. That is out on the 17th of September. It's the fourth book in her Hardy Billionaire series. So it's Billionaire, Fake Relationship. I can't wait. And then we have Fractured Obsession by Kaya Carrington Russell. This one is a dark romance. It has that mafia elements. Check your trigger warnings, but that one is out now. My Rules by T.L. Swan. It's her new billionaire romance. It's out on the 17th of September. And as soon as this is out, I will be reading it. And then lastly, Corinne Michaels on the 18th of September brings out All Too Well. And this is Brother's Best Friend. Say no more. Thank you so much for watching or listening to this week's episode. I had so much fun. And as always, if you want to get in touch, you can find me at VReads on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube. That's the tea this week. See you next week.